Ooh, happy Halloween! Spooky show today. Dave is here. Adam's here. I'm Adam. Happy Halloween, Dave.
Dave's not here. It's Batman.
Dave is dressed up very comically as Batman, which he just put the costume on about 5 seconds ago. It's wonderful.
How did I have a Batman costume randomly in my office? I do not know.
You have the gloves too?
Oh, yeah.
You gotta look
You
at
gotta
this.
go out when you're Batman. You gotta have the cape. You gotta have the bat suit. You gotta have the bat gloves. However, here I am with absolutely no mask on. I think my kid stole it.
You gotta see this. YouTube.com/fantasy /fantasy football today. And happy Halloween, everybody. Hope you're ready for an awesome show and an awesome evening of trick-or-treating. I have my Freddy Krueger sweater on. It's pretty cool, I guess. It's like ripped up at the collar. I like it.
Where are the knives? Where are
I
your
couldn't do
hands?
that. I think I gotta kill this music here. Ooh, pun intended. All right, we got Waiver Wire today. It's just me and Dave. No Jamie, unfortunately, but you can check out his Waiver Wire column as always. And Dave, let's start with some scary news. Just talk about what's going to impact the waiver wire. All right, so you know most of this stuff, but Kirk Cousins is out for the season with a torn Achilles, and we don't know exactly who the quarterback is going to be. Who's your best guess for this week against the Falcons?
Jaron Hall is my best guess for this week, and he will get an opportunity to earn a larger role. If he stinks, Nick Mullins will come off of IR, and he will be the quarterback for Minnesota.
Okay, Kenny Pickett could be a game-time decision for their Thursday game against the Titans, and Will Levis is expected to start in that game. Short week, short turnaround for Ryan Tannehill. And Levis, you got to figure Levis is auditioning a little bit here, and hopefully he can keep the job. We don't know who the Falcons quarterback is going to be. We might find out midweek. For this week, is it going to be Ritter? Is it going to be Heineke? And
I think you might already know.
You might. They get Minnesota. We'll see what happens there. Daniel Jones has been cleared, and he should play this week at Las Vegas. I don't know an update on Darren Waller, but I can't imagine Waller's going to play. Just a guess. Tyson Bagent is going to start again this week for the Bears. They're at New Orleans. Matthew Stafford got good news. He's day-to-day with a sprained UCL in his thumb. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm not expecting him, Dave, this week at Green Bay. Then they have a bye. So should we plan on not having Stafford?
I would expect Stafford to not play, but it's good news that he's day-to-day, right? Because there was a sense that he could be donezo and that it would be the Brett Rippon show the rest of the year. Obviously, thinking rest of season for Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, you'd much rather have Stafford there than Brett Rippon.
Grippin and Rippin. Kendrick Bourne tore his ACL, unfortunately. He is out for the season. Devontae Parker has a head injury. And we'll talk about Demario Douglas. But Demario Douglas, basically the same exact profile as Josh Downs, who we've been really excited about. So, right? I'll go over the numbers a little bit later, but slot rate, route depth, ADOT, those types of things, very similar players. Puka Nacua has knee swelling. I think he should be fine, but he might miss some practice time. Darren Waller with the hamstring, Drake London with the groin, and the Bills sign Leonard Fournette, and we'll see if we have any interest in adding him. The Jets put 2 more offensive linemen on IR. Now, Dave, who are your top 3 waiver wire priorities?
Man, it is not going to be a fun week on the waiver wire. I think it's going to be a lot of what you need. And I would imagine that a lot of fantasy managers are going to need a tight end. And so Trey McBride has this huge opportunity. Heath's guy, talked him up last week. If you had listened to Heath, you'd already have Trey McBride on your roster, 67% rostered. I think he should be the priority if you need a tight end, if you could use that position. I think people are going to bounce back to Jahan Dotson after this big game, especially if Curtis Samuel ends up missing some time. And then maybe it's Royce Freeman from there. Maybe it's a quarterback, obviously. Somebody had Kirk Cousins in every league. And Sam Howell, Derek Carr, they're out there in about a third of CBS leagues. And so a lot of people are going to rush right to Will Levis. I get it. I kind of like it. I think there's some huge upside there. How can there not be after what we saw last week?
Yeah, Kyler Murray is another guy you could add if he's available, 76% rostered. But most of the show, we'll talk about players who are less than 66 or less than 65% rostered, with Derek Carr exactly at 65. Gardner Minshew, Baker Mayfield. I do think quarterback's going to be a big priority because we do have 4 teams on bye in addition to Cousins and Stafford, not being able to play this week, certainly for Cousins, and we're thinking that's going to be the case for Stafford. We have got Detroit, San Francisco. Oh, sorry, Dave. Who else is on bye?
Jacksonville, Carolina.
Okay, thank you. All right, so those are some of your options there.
That's not right. That's not right.
Not
it's
Carolina.
Denver, Detroit, Jacksonville, and San Francisco. Why did I say Carolina?
I don't know. I mean, they're basically on a bye every week.
My bat brain malfunctioned.
Trey McBride, Jahan Dotson, Royce Freeman, Gardner Minshew, some of the big names we'll be talking about. I didn't catch a second of the World Series last night, unfortunately. Nice win for the Rangers. Didn't see any basketball. Obviously, it was a football night. But if you miss any of the action, check out Morning Buzz on CBS Sports HQ. Your sports day starts here. Highlights from all the top games and leagues. Catch up on storylines and social buzz. You can jump in and out. Morning Buzz runs all morning, starting at 9 a.m. and get it all for free on the CBS Sports app. Oh, you know what? Great comment here from Roth. I do need the Freddy Krueger hat. That's a big miss on my part. I apologize. I should have had that. I don't know what I would have done with my headphones, but yeah, I should have the hat. Maybe there's time for me to go buy it before I go trick-or-treating today. Also, today's the trade deadline. So
kind of a big deal.
Are you expecting a
lot of kids at my house? Yes.
Expecting a fantasy relevant trade deadline?
Every year, I think to myself, this is going to be a fun trade deadline. There's going to be so much movement. There are so many players that should be dealt. And then every year, nothing. And so I'm just going to bank on the odds of what history has taught us and say that no one of significance is going to get moved. Although after last night's game, I think the Raiders should try and move everybody. That's a wrap on their season. They can't move forward. Adams should get traded. Jacobs should get traded. Someone might give you something for Garoppolo, but the way that the NFL works, it's different than the NBA. It's different than Major League Baseball. The GMs just do not like to make trades, especially like last minute and hastily. It's just not something they do.
Yeah, but it's more than it used to be. It used to be nothing. Now we had Chase Claypool, obviously didn't work out, but Amari Cooper was a trade deadline deal. I mean, even Leonard Williams, it was it's an important deal. I mean, it doesn't do anything for fantasy really, except makes the Giants an easier matchup and the Seahawks a tougher matchup. But we didn't used to see stuff like that. But the Seahawks acquired Leonard Williams, defensive tackle, from the Giants for a 2nd-round pick next year and a 5th-round pick in 2025, I believe. Schedule alert real quick here. Derek Carr gets the Bears this week. They're 30th against quarterbacks. Then he gets Minnesota. They're 22nd, but they're obviously getting better. Then he has a bye, but 6 of Derek Carr's last 8 opponents ranked 20th or worse against quarterbacks. Yeah, I think it's a little deceiving. I think the matchups are just weird this year. I have a hard time really pinning down who's good and who's bad because it's just been so Jekyll and Hyde. But Carr on paper has a very favorable schedule. David Njoku has a very favorable schedule. Now, if you look at the next 3 opponents, they're all top 10 against tight ends. But if you look under the hood, I don't really think they're that good against tight ends necessarily, like Arizona this week. Arizona's 2nd best against tight ends. They haven't really faced a lot of good tight ends. They gave up 40 yards and a touchdown to Mark Andrews last week. But Njoku, anyway, after the next 3 games, his last 6 opponents all ranked 23rd or worse against tight ends. So those are just two players that have, on paper, favorable schedules. Doesn't mean that they're going to be good. Derek Carr and David Njoku, but just thought I'd bring it up.
It's 2 guys, and if you're into this sort of thing, I've got you covered with the in-season projected strength of schedule. Last week's in-season PSOS had Njoku with the 4th easiest schedule rest of season. Carr with the 3rd easiest schedule rest of season. Carr also the 4th easiest schedule over the next 4 weeks. That includes his matchup against Indianapolis. And that's a different data point than fantasy points allowed. It takes personnel into consideration, all that stuff. So if you're looking for teams, for example, going into last week, the Lions, easiest quarterback strength of schedule projected for the remainder of the season. If you're into that stuff, you can go to Sportsline, use promo code Richard, and your first month is $1. $10 a month after that. You can cancel whenever you want. You could literally sign up, pay the dollar, stick around for 20 days, and then cancel, and you're out $1, and you get to see 3 weeks worth of the projected strength of schedule.
All right, so let's talk about a scary subject here. Wait.
Cavities.
FAB. Scary FAB talk. Ooh. Look, let's be real here. It's not a great waiver wire week, right? It's not a break the bank week.
I don't think it is unless you need a quarterback.
McBride, actually. If you're in a shallow league and Kincaid, he's 80% rostered. Dalton Kincaid, I'd probably break the bank.
Yeah, close to it. Close to it.
The thing is, I mean, Dawson Knox, I don't know how long he's going to be out. It's not a season-ending injury.
Well, he went on IR, right?
Yes, he's going to be out at least
so
3
more games.
But you got to figure, like, if Kincaid takes this job and runs and catches and scores with it, hopefully that he won't be affected too much by Knox coming back. But he'd be, if Kincaid were available, he'd be my number one target, I think. But maybe Kyler. But let's say McBride. If McBride was your number one guy, how much of your original FAB budget do you think he's worth?
If you need a tight end desperately and it's half or full PPR, I think you look in that 25 to 35% range. And remember, we are well past the midpoint of the fantasy regular season. So this is going to be the time of year where fantasy managers go all in, take the rest of their FAB, push it forward on one guy. I think it's worth doing if you think that you're one guy away. If you need a stud tight end and McBride is the one you want, you shove it in. If you are in a super flex league and Will Levis is out there somehow, you make that type of a play. If you're desperate for a running back, Royce Freeman might be your best option. It's gross, but you might have to put down a big chunk of change on him. But this is how fantasy managers are thinking with their FAB at this point in the year.
Do you think Will Levis is going to keep the job no matter what?
Yes.
Okay. Trey McBride.
Their offense was so much better.
Yeah, it was.
And he will dictate coverage a little bit more, I believe, than Ryan Tannehill would. And he just changed everything for Tennessee. It would be silly if they go right back to Tannehill. It would be, I'll add this. If he's terrible against Pittsburgh, and then after Pittsburgh, they've got Tampa Bay. If he's terrible in those games, then yeah, they might go back to Tannehill, or they might just stick with Levis because he's the future. In the immortal words of Pete Prisco, play the kid. And the kid was amazing against Atlanta. He was really good. I was really impressed.
He was terrific. I wanted to give this note on Trey McBride because Kyler Murray is not a guy who's thrown a ton to his tight ends. The last 2 seasons he's played, 21 and 22, he's something like 20th or worse or lower in percentage of targets to tight ends. But the first 6 games of 2022, when DeAndre Hopkins was suspended and Marquise Brown was the number one, Zach Ertz was on pace for 99 catches, 847 yards, which is pretty bad on 99 catches, and 6 touchdowns on 144 targets per 17 games. So Zach Ertz was extremely fantasy relevant, and that's your Trey McBride stat. We talked about him a little bit yesterday on Beyond the Box Score. He's a little bit bigger and a little bit more lumbering than I thought he was. I don't know, Dave.
That's part of his charm.
I don't know if he's a great athlete, but I don't know that it really matters. I think he's obviously a must-add tight end. And also he's facing Cleveland, who allows the fewest fantasy points to tight ends this week, possibly with Clayton Tune as his quarterback. He may not be great this week, but Baltimore.
He's got Atlanta after that. He's got Houston after that.
Right, and Baltimore was great against tight ends, and he crushed them. So
yeah, well, listen, if he's going to continue to get a ton of targets, he could play anybody. You're going to start him. Yeah. How many tight ends are out there that have the potential to get even 8 targets a game? And he just had 14?
Right, exactly. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, top 3 at each position: shallow leagues, deep leagues, kickers, DSTs. And last night's game deserves a lengthy recap because Jahmyr Gibbs, forget it. I don't want to just play the kid. Get Jahmyr Gibbs.
Right? I got a bad feeling that he's going to be a between the 20s guy for the Lions. And then as soon as they get in the red zone, it's time for Montgomery.
I think between the 10s. I mean, look, honestly, that's what happened last night. Craig Reynolds took him off the field when they were near the goal line. But anyway, it deserves a lot of discussion. Maybe now's the time to sell Jim
I saw that Gibbs played more inside the 10.
Did he?
Yeah, 3 of 5 snaps.
How about inside the 5?
Didn't see that. I can pull that up, though. Again.
Okay, because I definitely saw Gibbs come off the field. All right, well, we'll be right back. More waiver wire right after this.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
So, Dave, I think when you have the waiver wire conversation about quarterbacks, probably have to frame it in two different lights, right? Do you need a rest of season guy because Cousins is out, or you just want a quarterback? Or do you need a week 9 guy because one of your quarterbacks is on a bye? So with that being said, who are your top 3 waiver wire quarterbacks?
If we're living in a world where Sam Howell and Derek Carr are available, they're going to be at the top of the list for me. Howell has certainly earned it. Huge fantasy production. I think it's 4 or 5 games with at least 21 fantasy points. He's just getting the job done. Commanders aren't running the ball like crazy. They're letting Howell play, and he's coming through with good numbers. I was really surprised pleasantly how he did against Philadelphia, and maybe we're overrating that Philadelphia defense a little bit. Maybe they're just not quite as shut down as we thought that they were. And then Derek Carr's playing Chicago. It's more of a 1-week thing. Carr did play well against Indianapolis. Chicago might be losing their best corner. Jalen Johnson's been given permission to seek a trade. Way to do it, Chicago, with less than 24 hours left before the trade deadline. That's doing your player a real solid. But Derek Carr should have a pretty good game, just might not get crazy volume in the game. If they're not available, Will Levis will be 92% available, 4 touchdowns, absolute cannon on him. And there's more to him than just, he completed a bunch of deep touchdowns. I liked a lot of what I saw. The 28% of his pass attempts went 15 or more air yards. He was off target under 7% of his throws. He had pressure on over 40% of his snaps, and he still put up really good numbers. His release was just as fast as it was in college. His footwork was better. There were design plays beyond the deep balls. 2 of the deep balls were just awesome plays. One with Hopkins, where he was in total synergy with him on a sluggo route. That was the 61-yarder. He's going to be my favorite because I think he's got the most rest of season appeal. And we didn't really see it from Levis. This dude can run too. So don't be surprised if he ends up stealing a touchdown from Derrick Henry before this year's over. I'd put him in ahead of Gardner Minshew. And then I think I have Baker Mayfield next. So let's just say if Howell and Carr are not available, Levis, Minshew, Mayfield at quarterback this week for me.
Okay. And Minshew has the Panthers, who see the fewest pass attempts per game in the NFL. And I like Minshew. In fact, I wouldn't mind him rest of season if I lost Cousins and I couldn't get Carr. Carr's thrown for 300 yards 3 straight games, by the way. And he's scored 18.3 or more fantasy points in 4 straight games. So honestly, I mean, he's kind of like a slightly better version of what Trevor Lawrence is giving you, which is sad. Okay, so Sam Howell, Derek Carr, if they're available, Will Levis, Gardner Minshew, Baker Mayfield, if Howell and Carr are not available. And since it is Halloween, I think when we talk about the quarterback for Washington, we have to talk about, all right, running backs, Dave. I don't know that we've even, we mentioned Royce Freeman. Who the heck are the crap running backs to add on the waiver wire this week?
So I think Freeman is at the top of the list. This is an unexciting and uninspiring list, but Royce Freeman is at the top of it, 76% available. Going to continue splitting, I think, for 2 more games in LA with Darrell Henderson. And then after that, there's a bunch of guys that, are you stashing or are you trying to find a starter? Because if you're trying to find a starter, I got bad news for you. It's not going to be pretty out there. Right? Cam Akers, 43% available, might be more of a stash than a start, but Alexander Madison hasn't been getting the job done. Akers has looked a little bit better over the last 2 weeks. I don't like that Akers played just 3 snaps in the second half last week. I don't know what's up with that. Leonard Fournette just got added by Buffalo. Definitely more of a stash. I'd probably slide him behind Zach Charbonnet, who's 40% available, and he finished off the game for Seattle last week. It wasn't Kenneth Walker. That's something that caught my eye a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's call it Freeman, Akers, Charbonnet as the top 3 running backs to get. But it's not with a ton of confidence that any of these guys are going to end up mattering. Akers might actually be the best rest of season guy.
Yeah, and if you don't need to start any of these guys, Jamie has Charbonnet first on his list. And obviously he seems like a high-end handcuff. And you got Ken Walker dealing with an injury, which is probably why Walker played something like 45% of the snaps. But, Charbonnet is a speculative ad, 60% rostered. Yeah, Akers not working on passing downs as much as Madison. But Freeman has been better per carry than Henderson in both games. Doesn't have a catch yet, but he's been running more routes than Henderson, and he's been splitting third down work with Henderson pretty even. So I don't think Henderson just has the passing downs role. I mean, they've been splitting that. In fact, like I said, Freeman ran more routes. Freeman might just be the better option. But if they have a backup quarterback this week against Green Bay, you might not be too interested. Green Bay, though, gives up the 6th most fantasy points to running backs. On the shallower side, we'll talk about these guys a little bit later, but Amari DiMercato, I have no idea when James Conner is coming back. I haven't been able to find any updates.
I know there's one more game on IR for sure.
Yeah, right, but I haven't seen any progress reports. But DiMercato is getting like every touch now, 2 weeks in a row. Unfortunately, faces Cleveland this week, and then there's Chuba Hubbard as well, who you might want to go get, 77% rostered. Your top 3 wide receivers, Dave.
For me, it's Dotson, number 1. 53% available, came alive last week. We knew that he had this kind of upside. And I almost wonder if he woke up because of what happened on that 4th and 5 play against the Giants. And now he's electric. And he's a huge reason why Sam Howell had the game that he did against Philadelphia. He's number 1 for me. And then I'm up for debate on the rest from there. There's Demario Douglas, who's available in 95% of leagues. We know that Kendrick Bourne is out for the year. What made Kendrick Bourne good for fantasy was high target volume, low A dot. And that's something that Demario Douglas can do. Douglas and Mac Jones apparently go way back together. So it's an opportunity for those two to kind of grow and develop and try and do something to help New England's offense. He should be a steady 10 to 15 PPR point per game guy. And then Quentin Johnson came alive a little bit. He had double-digit points, literally the lowest amount of double-digit points you could possibly get, but he had them, 10 against Chicago. If Josh Palmer's injury is significant, then I think Quentin Johnson could end up seeing more targets and getting more than 10 PPR points per game. I just don't know if it's going to be in the neighborhood of 17, 18, 20, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's a great point. Josh Palmer, he did play through that injury, but he came into the game Sunday night injured, hurt himself early, played through it. Quentin Johnston had his most involved game by far. And Dotson, I mean, for Dotson to be less than 50% rostered with the way we were so excited about him, you hope he can build on this. So who's a better rest of season ad, do you think? Trey McBride or Jahan Dotson?
I'm going to lean toward McBride just because of the position scarcity.
All right, let's go to tight ends then with Trey McBride, number 1. Who are the fallback plans if you can't get him?
Again, open to discussion on who follows him, but Logan Thomas is number 2 and David Njoku is number 3. Both of them right around 45 to 50% available on CBS Sports Leagues.
Okay, Trey McBride. I'll just go over everything that Dave said. So quarterbacks, Sam Howell and Derek Carr if they're available. If not, Will Levis, Gardner Minshew, Baker Mayfield. Running back, Royce Freeman, Cam Akers, Zach Charbonnet. If you don't need one this week, Charbonnet might have the most long-term upside. Obviously needs an injury.
I think Akers also has a lot of long-term upside and may not need an injury.
Yeah, I'm not sure I see it that way. I just don't think he's going to just completely take over and they're going to bench Madison. It's not like Akers is doing well. So and I don't really believe in the offense anymore. So.
Well, I do wonder, do they try and get something going with their run game because they know they've got a big question mark at quarterback?
I don't think they
O'Connell going to say, I don't care who our quarterback is. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. We've got the pass catchers for it. Let's just keep throwing. Or if it even matters, because they might be stuck either way. But I still think they have a good offensive line. You're right about Madison playing and passing downs. I don't think you're going to see Akers there, but you could see Akers gain ground on Madison on running downs. And again, like Madison can still play and have a decent role with Akers there. I'm going to have a hard time believing that Zach Charbonnet takes over the Seattle backfield unless Kenneth Walker's hurt.
Right. All right, I'm going to read Jamie's DST streamers. He likes the Chargers.
I do too. They're my favorite. I've got 3 too for DSTs.
Okay. Jamie has the Chargers, the Commanders at New England. Just that would change if they sell off some of their key players today. The Packers against the Rams with Brett Rippon likely playing. The Vikings at Atlanta and the Rams at Green Bay. Who do you like?
Chargers are number 1 for me. The Jets have allowed at least 12 points to 5 of the past 6 DSTs that they've played. Kansas City, the only one who didn't do it. The Vikings are next for me against Atlanta. 12 or more fantasy points to 2 of the past 3 and 4 of the past 6 defenses that they've gone against. Heineke taking over for the Falcons. In theory, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but whether it's Ritter or Heineke, turnovers will be had, and that Vikings defense is good. Chargers, by the way, are only available in about 36% of leagues. Vikings, way more available. And then I like some of the other ones that Jamie mentioned, but here's one more. The Giants, 78% available. I know they just traded away Leonard Williams. They're taking on the Raiders. Raiders have now allowed 12 or more fantasy points to 6 of the past 7 defenses that they have played. Garoppolo looks terrible. He's going to get blitzed like crazy. I think the Giants can just actually put up a decent number. I can't say that they're my 3rd favorite. Jamie mentioned some good ones. The Packers stand out for sure, but the Giants are going to be up there for me.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the other team in that game. I thought you were going to say the
Raiders. No, Daniel Jones is back, baby, and maybe that offensive line will be better. Both DSCs could end up being good. That game has more turnovers than touchdowns in that game for sure.
Yeah,
but the Raiders have to deal with Saquon, and after what Jahmyr Gibbs did on 80-something snaps the defense played on a short week, now they got to turn around and play. Saquon should have a monster game. Should.
All right. So at some point today, we're going to tell you how to peel a hard-boiled egg. I learned this morning. But first, we're going to talk about then give them out for Halloween. And then we're going to talk about shallow leagues and deep leagues. Dave, do you want to take the lead on this, or should I just go off Jamie's list here for the shallow league?
Jamie's list, and if there's something that I want to mention, I'll mention it.
All right, so shallow league players that I think would be, if I saw them in my leagues, I would immediately add Dalton Kincaid and Kyler Murray are the first 2 that come to mind. Josh Downs and Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think I'd be fairly interested in.
Definitely. Are there any running backs?
Hubbard, I think you have to.
There you go. Cuba's a decent one.
Tajay Spears,
just Dillon in Green Bay. What's his rostership? Is it too high?
81. No, he's in this discussion.
So maybe the smallest of leagues, Dillon could be there.
Yeah. But, Kyler and Kincaid, I think, would be the prizes for me if they were available. And I could not let Josh Downs go unrostered.
Of course not.
And then at tight end, other than Kincaid, let me see who the shallow league tight ends were. Sorry. They were Kincaid, Jake Ferguson. I don't know how I feel about Ferguson. He's not getting a lot of targets.
No.
Cole Kmet. I mean, where did that come from? 10 catches for 79 yards for Cole Kmet at the Chargers.
I didn't get a chance to watch it yet, but my guess is that he was just a guy that Bagent could dink and dunk to, which is something that was completely missing in the prior 6 quarters that Bagent played. Totally missing.
So, I think we're good there. And all right, how about deep leagues?
I can get you on some deeper leagues. Fournette is going to stand out. Freeman might be available in some deep leagues at 76%, but Leonard Fournette's going to be out there, 94% of leagues. A guy that you stash. What could his role be in Buffalo? I think he ultimately overtakes whatever Latavius Murray had been doing and might even start to peel away at James Cook. And just Fournette's going to do what he always does. I've seen this before. I've loved running backs that Fournette's come and played with, and then he takes the job from them. So fresh legs, big guy, knows what he's doing, can pass protect. Leonard Fournette makes sense as someone who could eventually be worth starting in fantasy. I just wouldn't expect it anytime soon. The rest of the running backs that I have on my list are available in about 50% of leagues. So I don't know if I've got any other deep running backs that make a lot of sense.
Well, Freeman is available and more than that, isn't it? Well, okay, but he's not part of this discussion. But Will Levis obviously is. Taylor Heineke is.
Sure.
Taylor Heineke definitely showed something. He's not that bad.
Well,
he's not. Well, he's not that bad. He's definitely a 2 QB league ad. And let's see. What do you think about the?
He had a higher ADOT in 1/2 by a full yard than Desmond Ridder in any game that Ridder played this year.
Right. That's good.
So I think it's almost better for the targets in Atlanta. So Kyle Pitts and Drake London, like the fact that they'll be able to expand their yards per catch and their metrics have a chance to be better. I like it a lot. So he's a little bit more aggressive and more of a downfield thrower than Desmond Ridder. I think he might even have more velocity on his throws than Desmond Ridder, but he also takes a lot of chances with the football. So he will be the proverbial double-edged sword for that Falcons offense. But the fact that Ridder was not still the Falcons quarterback on Monday tells you all that you need to know. I would be very surprised if they go back to Ridder this week.
Khalil Shakir is coming off a big game. And what do you think
That's
about
one of many good deep league guys? I think there are a lot of good deep league receivers that are stashable.
Okay, so Demario Douglas obviously is more than just a deep league guy, but he's 5% rostered, so he's out there. What do you think about the Giants if Waller misses time? Is there anyone that interests you?
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt is fun. He's got that, cheap version of Gabe Davis appeal because he can make, a great stat line on one catch. And he'll get Daniel Jones back, which is nice. And the offensive line will eventually get healthy. And the Giants season is over. Sorry, Adam. So you're going to see Hyatt continue to play a lot.
I think it's Wandale. If I'm going with anyone, it's Wandale because I think Hyatt is he's just a deep ball guy.
I know, but we have talked up Wandale so many times over the last few years.
This is a deep league thing, and this is a Waller replacement thing. But I think we've talked enough about them. Wandale is on Jamie's list toward the bottom. What about, I'm just going to throw it out, like you're in a super deep league. Any interest in Kadarrell Hodge if Drake London misses time, as Hodge had 75 yards at Tennessee for the Falcons?
No, they've got a bunch of other pass catchers that could work in and keep Hodge limited. But London said he was fine after the game.
Okay.
So we ranked him. We think that he's going to end up playing. Let me give you some more names. And these guys are out there in at least 50% of leagues. These are just going to be either stashes or high upside plays. So on more Gabe Davis types, but Rashid Shaheed, shout out to our guy, Zach Brook, for being on the Rashid Shaheed bandwagon since like last year. But he's had 18 or more PPR points in 2 of his past 3 games. Obviously a boom bust flex, probably better as a bye week replacement than a guy that you want to reliably start or even think about as a stash candidate who eventually becomes a reliable starter. Jaden Reed, 10 or more PPR points in 3 of his past 4. Technically, he's outscored Dobbs in 3 straight and Watson in 2 straight. Maybe this is the best receiver in Green Bay. That's like being the best bachelor at your family reunion. But, it is what it is. Treylon Burks is a good stash. He's 82% available. How about this scenario? The Titans move on. They deal DeAndre Hopkins. They get a great deal for him. Treylon Burks is now healthy, and he's the number 1 receiver from Will Levis chucking deep balls. He was close to connecting with Levis on a deep catch last week. Jonathan Mingo ran the most routes versus Houston. This is their first game after the bye. He's 86% available, somebody for the bench. And then Zay Jones, deep league bench stash out there in about 70% of leagues. Could end up being somebody that helps unlock Trevor Lawrence once he's healthy after the bye. You could literally wait till Sunday morning to add Zay Jones, by the way. No one's looking for him off the waiver wire tonight or tomorrow night.
Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll tell you how to peel an egg and recap Detroit 26, Las Vegas 14. And we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
An NWSL semifinal Sunday you'll never forget, with an icon leading the Shield winners against a legend who's hanging up her boots, and a budding star looking for back-to-back championships against a squad determined to give their captain a grand finale. All on CBS Sports Network.
Oh, Jahmyr Gibbs, you are so good. But unfortunately, I think the party's over. Dave, what do you think? So Detroit wins it 26-14. settled for a lot of field goals. They had the ball for 39 minutes and 33 seconds. Las Vegas just was awful. Couldn't keep the ball, and it was actually the best I had seen Josh Jacobs look all year. So that was encouraging. But let's talk about Jahmyr Gibbs and what you think the future holds for him, and just give you the final numbers on Gibbs. Sorry, he's had 20 carries for 152 yards and a touchdown, and 5 catches for 37 yards.
Well, let's start with Jacobs real quick. I wonder if he was trying to play his best so he could get a one-way ticket out of Vegas. Maybe he's had enough. Remember, his contract expires at the end of this year, and there are some teams looking for running backs out there. Jacobs could help them out. I wonder if the Raiders will actually move him. My gut says no. All right, Gibbs, fun. Raiders do this, though. They make people look great. That being said, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is great, and we've been talking about him as a awesome prospect for months and months and months. He came through in this great opportunity. But if you're Dan Campbell and you've got David Montgomery coming back after the bye week, what do? You're going to take advantage of the situation. You've got 2 stud running backs, and Montgomery, certainly the better back near the goal line. You said it, Adam. 3 field goals to start the game. 44 yards, 31 yards, 33 yards. So 2 of them were in the red zone. That's going to be the area where David Montgomery can dominate. And so I would expect Montgomery to maybe split snaps between the 20s with Gibbs, and Gibbs on passing downs makes all the sense in the world. And then when they get inside the 10, inside the 5, that's Montgomery time. And by the way, you asked me to look it up. I've got the numbers for you. The Lions had 3 snaps inside the 5 last night. All 3 went to Craig Reynolds.
Yeah.
Not Jahmyr Gibbs. So
Dave, I'm just throw this out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a very strong possibility that after the bye, if David Montgomery's healthy, which I expect him to be, everything goes back to exactly the way it was before. And Jahmyr Gibbs is basically a sit. I mean, I think that's a possibility. I think we might be so freaking mad when we are recapping Sunday night, week 10, and we said, yeah, start Jahmyr Gibbs, and then it's David Montgomery with 18 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown, and Jahmyr Gibbs with 7 carries and 2 catches, and going back to the 9 or 10 PPR fantasy points he's been whenever David Montgomery, roughly. Let's say 8, 12.6, and 9.1. That's what he scored in 3 games in full PPR with Montgomery. I fear that he's not, that it's just David Montgomery's job, and Jahmyr Gibbs did not make any inroads. That's my fear. What do you think? You think that's realistic?
I think it's very realistic, but I also think it's possible. I think 2 other things are possible. One more likely than the other. One, I think there will be games where Montgomery is handling the lead role, so to speak, and Gibbs still outproduces him because he has some big runs and he's got that breakaway upside. We saw that against the Raiders. A game like that will come where Montgomery has 14 carries, 35 yards, and a touchdown, and Gibbs will have 9 touches, but he'll total 100 yards on him, and he scores as well. So that'll happen. What I think is less likely to happen is that the Lions say, hey, look, Gibbs is great. He gives us more explosiveness. Defenses have to play us differently when he's on the field. Let's give him a lot more work. There might be matchups where they give him a little more work over Montgomery, and it could be a game-to-game proposition. But ultimately, I think the one role that Gibbs has no shot at getting is inside the 5. And then anything else is going to be a split between him and Montgomery, save for 3rd and 8, because it doesn't make sense to put Montgomery in there compared to somebody like Gibbs who can make a play out of the backfield. But the coaching staff should have confidence in Gibbs now. They should absolutely see him as somebody who can be a stellar playmaker, and he's going to have some design plays. He had design plays in week 1. He should have scored a touchdown in week 1. That was before Montgomery did anything. And then we've seen Montgomery get hurt twice along the way. So if you've got Gibbs, I wouldn't expect you to get any low ball offers for him, but I certainly wouldn't expect you to trade him away for next to nothing. If someone overwhelms you with an offer, then sure, he's a sell high. Just in the same vein that Montgomery is a buy low, and that people that have Montgomery and they've been sitting on him for a couple of weeks, he hasn't played, maybe they'll give him up cheaply. And I think it's a good idea to acquire him because he will have a lot of games left where he scores plenty of touchdowns.
So who would you rather have rest of season between the 2 of them? I just put up a Twitter poll. I always forget to check the Twitter polls. So Schaefer, please remind me toward the end of the show to check Twitter. But right now, Jahmyr Gibbs has 2/3 of the vote. Who would you rather have rest of season in PPR? But it's only 42 votes. What do you say?
It's the recency bias kicking in and what he just did last night. I think Montgomery is probably still a little bit better, but they're going to be very close in value on the trade chart. Probably within 3 or 4 points of each other would be my guess.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'd rather have Montgomery. I know I would rather have Montgomery.
It's not sexy. It's not fun to say. We want to say Gibbs, but it's reality. And Dan Campbell has let us know on multiple occasions this year and before he even signed David Montgomery what he thinks of David Montgomery. And so Montgomery's not going away.
I got to tell you, I mean, I think Montgomery is really, really good in short yardage. And I think not having him yesterday actually hurt them a little bit because they kept settling for field goals. And I think they were missing him a little bit near the end zone. But obviously you see the plays that Jahmyr Gibbs makes. And most, not just Montgomery, I feel like most running backs can't do some of the things he does. He's just so fast. There was one play where he goes right up the middle. He kind of slithers by someone. And then he just hop steps, jump steps to the right, goes right past the linebacker. That might have been his touchdown, but may not have been. But, it was similar. He just has incredible speed. And most players can't do what Jahmyr Gibbs did last night. That was really terrific. All right, any other takeaways from this game? I mean, Devontae Adams, if you didn't watch the game, Devontae Adams was awful. 1 for 11 on 7 targets.
Statistically, he was awful.
Right. He could have had a pretty big game, and he had 7 of Garoppolo's 21 pass attempts, 21 targets. So
if Garoppolo was accurate, he could have had 2 more catches for 158 more yards and 2 touchdowns. That's just an example of how off target Garoppolo was on his deep throws. 49ers fans are having flashbacks of their Super Bowl right now, but there were 2 plays where Adams beat his guy. This is not a case of Devontae Adams being a bad football player. He is still a great football player. He's been saddled in a rough situation in Las Vegas, and Garoppolo had just an absolute stinker of a game. So woulda, coulda, shoulda, but Devontae will obviously have better games. Is he a buy low? He might be a buy really low.
Do you see how he's just juking guys? I mean, he's still
yeah. Now listen, there were also plays where the Lions had a safety over the top, and maybe 1 or 2 plays where he was in single coverage and he couldn't get past his coverage, couldn't get past his man, but he still looked really good to me.
Yeah, all right. He still looks like Devontae Adams. Just things have not gone his way, but I do love the 33% target share. And look, Garoppolo might not be a great quarterback, but this will be his worst game of the season, I think. I mean, 120 yards or whatever it was.
It was pathetic. And you mentioned the time of possession.
Right.
They barely had the ball. They had the ball for a third of the game.
And you know what's going to happen on Sunday? I really believe this is going to happen. The Giants are going to shadow him with Deonte Banks because they shadow everyone with Deonte Banks. They just a rookie cornerback who's having a good year, but he still gives up like 100 yards to every number 1 receiver. I think Devontae is going to go off in week 9, Dave. Mark it down. Let's go.
Everybody's going to start him anyway. Like you'd have to be really loaded to sit Devontae Adams at this point, but that's advice you might be able to use for DFS.
Would you rather have Jahmyr Gibbs or Devontae Adams?
Rest of season?
Yeah.
It's Adams still.
You can make that trade. I guarantee people would take Gibbs. Because 64% of voters out of 146 votes would take Gibbs over Montgomery. Not to say they're wrong, but it's so one-sided that I think you can get a lot of value from Gibbs if you want to turn him into Adams. All right, that's about it for this game. I mean, Josh Reynolds is an easy drop at this point. 3 straight games with 3 or fewer targets. They're going into a bye. Amon-Ra St. Brown is incredible. 100 or more yards in 5 of 7 games. And Sam Laporta might be tight end 3 rest of season. Well, Dave, I learned a lesson today about peeling hard-boiled eggs, which I've never done before. You've done that a lot.
First of all, you're really going to talk about this? This is embarrassing.
I never told you what happened. I learned how to peel hard-boiled eggs.
Okay, so you learned how to do it.
Yes, I'll tell you what happened. So I had to make lunch for my son today. So last night I boiled the eggs, put them in the refrigerator in cold water, as I was informed to do. But then this morning, I had no idea how to peel the egg. I'm trying to peel it. Like, I can't peel it. I didn't know if you crack it. I didn't know if that was what to do. What are you doing? What are you doing, Dave?
I just undid the cape.
So I have the 2 hard-boiled eggs on a plate, and I couldn't peel it like with my finger. Obviously, you're supposed to crack it, but I didn't know that. So I take out my phone, and I'm about to Google how to peel hard-boiled eggs. I immediately drop my phone onto the eggs. I crack them, and then I go, oh, You're just supposed to crack them. And then I was able to peel them. So there you go, Dave. My phone helped me peel hard-boiled eggs. I figured it out via technology.
You're almost 40 years old. You've never cracked a hard-boiled egg until today?
I didn't know if you're supposed to crack them or not. Like,
have you ever made eggs before?
Yeah, I don't hard boil them. I scramble. I just crack eggs and make scrambled eggs.
So you've cracked an egg. You know that there's a shell on that thing.
Yes. But I didn't know if the things changed with a hard boiled egg. Yeah, I didn't want to ruin it.
Would you like a tip on how to crack eggs moving forward?
Sure.
Life-changing tip.
With my phone?
No, keep your phone in your pocket.
Okay.
Go ahead and you've probably got a hard surface somewhere in your kitchen.
No, I bought a house that has no hard surfaces.
No hard surfaces whatsoever.
It was
right? A rubber. You're in a rubber house, rubber room. You should be after this. Okay. Crack the egg on the hard surface, roll it a little bit so you're going to have cracks all over the egg. Grab a spoon and gently tuck the underside of the spoon, turn it, curve side up, and just kind of like wedge the spoon in between the egg and the eggshell. And if you're good at it, you'll be able to get the whole eggshell off in one piece in about 3 seconds. And then you've got your hard-boiled egg ready to go for your son's lunch.
Oh, you do that with a hard-boiled egg. Okay, I thought you meant like a regular egg. I was like, damn, that sounds really messy. Let's go to the drop.
No, you already know how to do a regular egg.
Yeah, I thought you were giving me a tip on that. But okay, hard-boiled egg.
Smash the hell out of that thing on the side of on the rim of the pan. And this is your brain on drugs.
All right, the drop-o-meter. 0 to 10. 0 is don't drop them, idiot. 10 is why didn't you drop them already, idiot? Miles Sanders.
5. You're never going to feel comfortable starting him. He's bench depth.
Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, I think it's about time.
You're gonna change your hashtag on your.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get rid of it. It's got to be an 8. Bye weeks are coming. Steelers already had their bye. What is he? He's at best a bye week running back replacement. I'm sorry, it's did not work out like I thought it would, or like I was told it would.
Nico Collins.
1.
Yeah, no.
Not ready to say goodbye to him yet at all. I'm worried about him, but I'm not cutting him.
Tank Dell.
If Nico's a 1, Tank is like a 4. Another
Jordan
player that I would prefer to hold on to.
Jordan Love.
With buys coming up, I think he's a little bit harder to let go of. You might actually be able to trade him for a bench player on somebody else's team because even when he's bad, he's putting up moderate fantasy points. Let's put him at 5.
Christian Watson.
3. I'm still kind of a believer.
Romeo Dobbs. 9 targets.
Yeah, same as Watson. 3.
Geno Smith.
6, but don't be surprised if you come back to him. Maybe as soon as week 10. He could be an excellent bye week replacement quarterback in week 10. He takes on the Commanders at home.
Adam Azer from Dylan. Adam Azer is the type of guy to peel the outside of his white bread. There are so many things wrong with that. First of all, I don't eat white bread ever, unless it's at a restaurant or something. Only wheat for me. And I like the crust. I don't mind the ends of the bread, of the loaf.
Yeah, the baker's nose?
No, I mean just like the butt.
That's called the baker's nose.
Oh, is it? Is it? Okay. Yes, I don't mind the baker's nose.
Now you've learned 2 things on this show today.
Baker's butt. Waiver wire. Back to the waiver wire. We'll just go over it in case you missed anything. At quarterback, see if Kyler Murray and Sam Howell are available. And then Jamie likes Minshew over Carr this week. I like Carr over Minshew. What do you like?
I do too.
Okay. Maybe, you know what? Honestly, I shouldn't speak for Jamie because there's always context in the article. Maybe he likes Minshew over Carr rest of season, but Carr this week, Carr is a better matchup. But
Carr is the better matchup. Carolina's only allowed 2 quarterbacks to get over 20 fantasy points. If there's ever a game where you think the Colts are going to be in a shootout, start Minshew. That's a good move. But this could be a game where the Colts can run to win.
Baker Mayfield, we haven't really talked about. He scored 18.2 or more fantasy points in 5 of 7 games. Pretty good game. 25 points against the Bills last week. And he gets Houston this week. They're fine. Then he gets Tennessee, who's actually surprisingly their 11th best against quarterbacks. But what do you think about Baker Mayfield if you lost Cousins?
Definitely not my favorite of the guys to go and add. I think both Levis and Minshew have more upside, but Mayfield has been throwing the ball a lot. And so you're hoping that that continues, and it probably will, because I don't know how the Bucs are going to have any kind of a good run game without a trade. I like Mayfield based on volume. He's going to have over 35 pass attempts per game. We know he's got some great wide receivers. When you're throwing that much, it could be good. He could have 2 touchdowns and just fall into decent production and decent yardage, or he could stink. And he's been stinky a couple times this year too, but he's better than a lot of the other quarterbacks that you'll go and pick up.
And you definitely prefer Levis to
Yes.
Heineke in a deeper league.
Yes.
You could also look at Nick Mullins, who might get the job for the 2 QB.
If you want to try and get ahead of it, sure, but he's not playing this week. So if you pick him up, like, that's great. You've got a guy for maybe week 10. Then what are you doing at your quarterback spot this week?
Pick up Jameis Winston and just hope there's a trade. I mean, you'll know
but you're going to know by the time waivers run. That's what you do if you've got open ad drops, and you can just add anybody you want now. You can carry Winston through the trade deadline.
All right, running back, here are some of the shallow league running backs that Jamie mentions: AJ Dillon, Tajay Spears, Chuba Hubbard, and Amari DiMercado, and Elijah Mitchell, and Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert, 67% rostered. That might be a guy to get. Zach Charbonnet is Jamie's favorite to get. Leonard Fournette, Cam Akers, Devin Singletary. Unfortunately, he's splitting, but Singletary, 41% rostered.
Might be the best running back in Houston, although he did not play near the goal line last week.
Let's see. Royce Freeman, as mentioned earlier. Kenneth Gainwell gets some opportunities every now and then and fumbles. And that's pretty much it there. Wide receiver, Josh Downs and Jackson Smith and Jigba are the shallow league guys.
Love them. Downs especially.
Oh, I got a guy we haven't talked about yet here from Jamie's list. Jahan Dotson is his top guy. We've talked about him. Brandon Cooks is number 2 for him. Cooks at Philadelphia could be a shootout. You interested in picking him up?
We talked about him last week, and he followed up his 4-target, 4-catch, 1-touchdown game with a 4-target, 3-catch, 1-touchdown game. Is it too much to ask for Brandon Cooks to get 6 targets in a game? Maybe it is, because he hasn't gotten it except once this year. I'm not in love with Cooks. He's a bye-week replacement wide receiver that you hope finds the end zone.
3 on the list is Rashid Shaheed after Dotson and Cooks. And then 4 is Demario Douglas. And I apologize. We should have spent a little more time on Demario Douglas earlier, because I think I'd put him second. I'd go Dotson Douglas.
That's how I have it.
Yeah. And let's talk about him. So 5 catches for 25 yards on 7 targets. Go get that guy. Yeah. So short area. This year, he has a 9.1 yard ADOT, which isn't that low, but among the 66 wide receivers who have 30 or more targets, he's got the lowest. He's 65th in average route depth. Only Rondale Moore has lower average route depth than Demario Douglas. But I just think that it's not such a bad thing, because it's exactly what Kendrick Bourne had been doing in week 6 and 7 when his ADOT was 2 yards. And what they're doing with Demario Douglas is kind of similar. They'll use him on some wide receiver screens. I think Jacob talked about it on Beyond the Box Score yesterday. A lot of his targets in college were wide receiver screens. He is not going to go downfield. He is not going to make big plays, but he can get you some yak. He can get you some catches. And if he just steps in and takes that Kendrick Bourne role, well, that might be pretty valuable for Demario Douglas. And like I said earlier, profile is very similar to Josh Downs. They both play 75% or more of their snaps in the slot, which is extremely high, among the highest in the NFL. Douglas has a much higher target per route run rate, but he has fewer routes run. And he's got a higher ADOT than Downs, believe it or not. So if I'm excited about Downs, I guess I should be excited about Douglas. So yeah, I'd put him behind Dotson, as would you.
I mean, I'd be less excited.
I am too.
But obviously he's got an opportunity. I'm trying to look up a stat and I'm having a hard time getting it. Crap. So I'll need a minute on that. But I think you covered it pretty well with Douglas. Short area target. I think he can work in the intermediate range. And he's fast. And think about all the Patriots receivers who we've talked about this year. Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Juju. These guys are not all particularly fast. Some can build up to good speed, but Douglas is a little bit quicker. And now the Patriots are forced to use him. So I'm a fan of Demario Douglas. I think that he's better in PPR than non.
Yeah, I saw some routes that he ran, targets that he got where he, line up in the slot, goes upfield, maybe 5 or 6 yards, makes a nice cut inside. Very Welkery, right? What do you see from those Patriots slot receivers? He can do that.
And the slot receivers have a great track record in New England, just generally speaking. Bourne was that guy a couple of weeks ago.
Dave, talk about the tight ends real quick. I have to hop off for 1 second. Sorry.
So Trey McBride is going to be my favorite of the bunch. Everybody knows why. Lots of targets, lots of opportunities. The 2 tight ends after that, we should have a discussion about. There's Logan Thomas and David Njoku. Njoku's been awesome over the last 2 games. Certainly has been a good fantasy. It's longer than that, actually. 10 or more PPR points in 3 of his past 4. Taking on Arizona. PJ Walker figures to be the quarterback. 2 games this year where the Cardinals have allowed at least 8.5 half PPR points. Andrews was one of them last week. Waller the week before. Is Njoku in that class? I don't think so, but I still think he can get around 10 PPR points. He seems to be coming on a little bit. Logan Thomas taking on the Patriots. Patriots have allowed a tight end to at least 9.5 half PPR points in 3 of their past 5. It's been Kincaid. It's been Mayer. It's been Ferguson. They've all had anywhere between solid and good volume. Logan Thomas has had great volume, at least 6 targets in 3 of his past 4, at least 9 full PPR points in 3 of his past 4. I'm sorry to go back and forth between half PPR and full PPR. There's a reason for it. You don't care why. Just know that Logan Thomas continues to get good opportunities, and the matchup isn't that bad. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go with Thomas because he's getting opportunities and the Commanders are throwing a lot and they're taking on the Patriots, it's a better matchup. I get it. I would do that. And that's how I have it ranked. I have McBride 1, Logan Thomas 2, David Njoku. I think Thomas is just a little bit more upside now and rest of season than Njoku, but those are my top 3.
Yeah, Taysom Hill we haven't discussed here. So he only had 1 target. He had 9 carries for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
At the Colts. And how do you feel about Taysom Hill with the going back to his old role?
Can I get the stat out on Demario Douglas that I wanted to give before first?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll put Taysom Hill in gold.
In the second half against Miami, there's no Bourne, there's no Parker. They're out with injuries. Demario Douglas had a target per route run rate of 30%. That means basically 1 out of every 3 routes he ran, he got a target. Mm-hmm. And that was over 15 snaps. So I'm definitely encouraged by that. Now, Taysom Hill, we're talking about him. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
We already talked about it on Sunday. 12 routes run, big step down with Juwan Johnson back. And I almost feel like Taysom Hill is basically back in that running back role, that annoying role where he could steal touchdowns and maybe he catches 1 or 2 passes a game. I'm not as excited about him as I was 2 games ago. I feel like the window closed on Hill being a contributor as a pass catcher. And so I'd rather have Thomas and Njoku there. But if you're looking for a tight end, he's just as good as any tight end where I hope he scores a touchdown. He's exactly that guy. He just doesn't have the upside for catches and yards like the other tight ends do.
Yeah, I had this thought. I don't remember when I was saying it. I think it was yesterday on Beyond the Box Score. If I can stash Taysom Hill for 1 more week just to see what happens, maybe he just should play tight end. He was good. He actually performed a lot better than anything Juwan Johnson has done this year. So why not go back to him in that role? I don't think they will, but I wouldn't mind waiting 1 more week to see if they go back to him, if you can afford to stash Taysom Hill. But as of now, I mean, if he's just going to be this running back, that's way too risky for me. Do you think Jonnu Smith is worth it anymore with Heineke? In theory?
I'm kind of sour on him. We've seen the targets go down now over the past couple of weeks. It's something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, really when they acquired Van Jefferson. And now that Heineke's under center, if Heineke's under center, I should say, then I think that hurts Jonnu Smith even more.
And unfortunately, Chigo Okonkwo dropped that ball. It was a funny debate yesterday. And whose fault was that? Because it was not a good throw by Levis, but it was Chig should have caught that ball.
He should have caught it anyway.
I'm interested to see what happens if Levis can get something out of Chig, but No, I'm not gonna
Another deep league stash, and he would
Last
be
one.
far more appealing if the Titans were to trade away a receiver. I don't know if the Titans are going to be sellers now.
Just last one real quick. Hunter Henry without Kendrick Bourne. Any interest?
Not a lot.
Okay. DSTs, just to recap: Chargers, Commanders, Packers. This is Jamie's list. Chargers, Commanders, Packers, Vikings, Rams. Dave also is interested in the Giants. And then kickers: Blake Groupie, Kaimi Fairbairn, Evan McPherson, and Dustin Hopkins. I forgot to ask you about IDPs.
If anybody needs help with IDPs, reach out to me on X. I'll be there.
Reed Blankenship, whenever he plays pretty well. Safety for the Eagles. So see if you can pick him up. All right. And that's going to do it. Thank you very much, everybody. Happy Halloween. Oh,
You see, he wants.
wait, not that. Where's my? There we go. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. Have a great day. We'll probably talk to you later with a trade deadline recap. But if we don't, have a scary Tuesday, everybody. Goodbye from Fantasy Football Today.
Are you trying to sound scary?
No, I just have a cold.